Hello, you're welcome. You're welcome onto my channel today, and it gives me great joy to observe you are viewing this video. I'm Professor Olayinka Akanle. I'm a lecturer in the university. On this channel, I do a number of thoughts, but all I do, you can cluster them into four: sociology, research, relationship, and migration. Meanwhile, if you have not subscribed to this channel, kindly go ahead and click subscribe on your screen right now to join my family of subscribers, and so that you might be alerted every time I drop new videos. Thank you very much once again. Today, I want to be talking. I want to drop a series of videos on theories of urban sociology, and this is the first one. So I want you to stay tuned to this channel for the coming weeks and more, because I'll be dropping different videos on theories of urban sociology. So this one is the first one, urban ecology theory. This is a very important theory in urban sociology, and it's found so much relevance, though it's been around since about the 1920s, but today we still find it. It's one of the most influential theories in urban sociology, sociology theory generally. So what does this theory say? Who are the founding fathers? The core arguments, the key areas, the strength of the theories, and the weaknesses. So I'll be telling you what they have. So stay tuned to the end, and remember to click subscribe right now. Urban ecology theory. Don't forget, I've said previously that theories usually explain their explanatory framework to explain problems, to explain challenges, and to give direction, and to study, to give logical argument and explanation for social reality. So this theory is like a theory, like every other theory in sociology, also want to explain, attempt to study, the relationship that exists between people and nature in cities. So we have human beings on the one hand, natural environment on the other hand, and how these two elements, the natural environment, the nature, and human beings as people, how they relate in cities, and how this relationship impact the structure, the spatial, you know, environment in cities. And this is essential. And how this affect what we see as cities, the changes in cities, and the planning of cities, evolution of cities, dynamics of cities, and statics of cities. Essentially, it's a theory that wants to explain urban behavior, urban planning, urban processes, urban realities, and urban structures, and even governance. And since the 1920s, that these theories emerged in the Chicago School. We call it Chicago School because strongly originated from the University of Chicago. So we call it Chicago Schools. That this theory has its root in the Chicago School of Sociology. So essentially, also this theory attempts to explain urban planning, urban processes, urban phenomena through sociological perspective. And don't forget, I said this is one of the most influential theories, in urban sociology. So, and this theory attempts to explain the complex socio-ecological systems. You see cities, this theory sees city as complex socio-ecological system. The city has ecology on the one hand and social processes on the other hand. And this relationship is not just so straightforward, but also complex as people move around, as structures emerge in cities, and this interaction between the ecological environment systems and human systems are not so straightforward. They are complex, whether you look at it from the problems that emerge as human beings and natural environment interact, the opportunities they produce, the challenges they produce, they are not so straightforward. And don't forget, I've told you that this story emerged in the 1920s from the Chicago School model, like we call them. So it talks about urban spatial organization. Don't forget, that's a key word. This church is interested in explaining urban spatial organization and how human processes, human behaviors, human relationships, human decisions and indecisions, human actions and inactions, how they affect the nature of cities and the organization of cities in terms of the spaces in those areas. And the theories also attempt to address the modern challenges of inequality in spaces, of and also of integrating the natural sciences and social sciences. Biological sciences are considered also as natural sciences because a key concept of this theory, a key issue in this theory is the concept of the ecosystem. The concept of the ecosystem. And now, what do we mean by ecosystem, generally speaking? Talks about biological communities where living organisms interact with natural and physical environment. So, but it's supposedly a biological community. Don't forget all the elements of the natural environment and human organisms, how they relate and how they impact the environment, and how the natural environment impacts them. So it's like bringing ideas of the natural sciences in terms of biological sciences together with social sciences to look at human relationship and their interaction with the natural environment or the biophysical environment, to look at the biodiversity. So biodiversity is another very important concept. So the integration of natural sciences and social sciences in explaining cities and the spatial organization of cities and human relationship in cities is a major element of this story. As we want to understand human processes and their implications for biodiversity. Don't forget cities are natural. They are natural environment and the same time social environment since human beings live in these places. So the theory attempts to explain so that we can understand the urban processes and the implication for biodiversity. It's like the issue of biodiversity, ecosystem services, human environment interaction, and how these human environment interactions can lead to environmental issues, social issues, ecological issues like pollution, climate change, flooding. Because this theory will let us know that many of these problems that we have in urban societies, like climate change, flooding, human-induced disasters, and pollution, and the rest of it, that there are consequences of poorly managed social and social relations induced environmental situations or natural environment induced human problems. So as human beings interact with the environment, and environment interact with human beings, these tend to produce some challenges like pollution, environmental challenges like flooding, also like climate change. All of these affect the biodiversity of the and the ecosystem. And this theory is very important because when you look at cities across the world, whether you're talking about Washington D.C., Mumbai, Shanghai, New Delhi, Beijing, Accra, Lagos, or wherever you look at it, you will find that we're talking about a lot of environmental issues today, and people are being encouraged to moderate and change their human behavior to reduce the impact on cities. I was discussing with somebody about Australia recently about the treatment of snakes in Australia. You don't just kill snakes. So definitely you call snake catchers to take the snake and return them to their natural habitat. So, but in some societies, they just kill the snakes, and this affects their biodiversity, their ecosystem, the eco-equilibrium, so and social environment equilibrium. And these are such policies like we talked about in Australia. It can be vividly explained from the angle of human ecology theory. The need for us to relate with the environment carefully as human beings and to be able to manage the environment and be able to manage our social realities per day. Key figures in these theories from the Chicago model perspective talk about Robert Park and Ernest Borges. These are two important figures. Predominantly, Robert Park, Central, Frontline and Center, they worked with Ernest Borges to develop this. So there are so many other theorists, influential figures we can mention, but these two individuals, Robert Park and Ernest Borges, are very influential. So I've told you a lot about the core argument. More arguments that cities are environments governed by some forces that you can compare to the natural ecosystem. So when you see these environments of cities, they are not just ordinary. They are not just social. They also have the forces that govern city can be compared to the forces that govern the natural ecosystem. We look at the issue of competition and evolution. In natural ecosystem, competition for space. That's why you don't see lions living where you have birds. You don't have birds or smaller animals like rats going to where you have lions. Lions have their own domain. Hyenas have their own domain. So and they compete for this space. Spaces can be invaded. And that is why you see with even in cities also, you have competition for spaces, you have demolition, you have gentrification. So evolutions are very central. Then you have the issue of concentric zone. Concentric zone, the belief that cities have their own niches, have their own centers, and cities, evolve or develop as rings, form rings that you have the CBDs being the center, the nucleus of the city. And cities continue to emerge and form ring as they move back, as they move forward. And these concentric zones, are very important, like the CBDs. And this argument says cities develop from a center, from a niche, and they continue to form successive rings as residential areas develop out of the concentric zone and form like affluential communities around the zones as people want to live close to the center. And they form cities like rings, they form residential communities that are defined by people of common characteristics in income, in affluence, and in other things that we can link back to the CBD. And CBD forms the concentric zones. The CBD is surrounded by successive rings of residential zones with increased affluence. So the essence of this is that when you see certain niches, certain areas, you can really express certain behaviors and for them to impact the environment and the environment to impact them. Then you also have the concept of invasion and succession. Like social groups move in and out of cities to form different clusters of areas. And these people tend to share common identity over time as they move in and out to invade. This today we will call the issue of invasion. We will likely look at issues like gentrification. Gentrification, when certain group of people, whether on account of government policies or some other policies, move in and out of different communities, in a way we can call invasion. So urban areas, they have ecological niches and natural areas. And that's why you have the green zones, the green belts, water areas. To prevent flooding, you have to build in certain ways. And people with similar characteristics, socioeconomic characteristics, form different communities and form clusters. And you can compare these processes to those of natural environment, like I mentioned. Don't forget what I said earlier. Listen to this very well. It's about urban planning, urban processes, to let you know cities are not just physical elements. They're not just physical spaces. They are also social spaces that must be deliberately planned and managed. We should not have ungoverned places in cities. That is the recipe for disaster. So cities are not just physical places. They are also cultural. They are also behavioral. They are also social. And cities, are dynamic. They are dynamic social and ecological environment. They change. Though they take a life of their own, they can also transform and be transformed as human beings relate socially with their ecological environment to form a dynamic socio-ecological system. So human activities and social processes are intertwined. Human activities and ecological processes are intertwined. You cannot separate human beings from their environment. They are interlinked. The social processes, the ecological processes form intertwined systems, interlocked systems. And you must understand this, the relationship between these human activities and ecological processes and their intertwined nature in being able to understand the human environment interactions and their implications. So we talk about, in terms of key areas, we talk about the urban processes, biodiversity, and ecosystem services. So pay attention to ecosystems, biodiversity services, and in planning, environment must be factored into the equation, especially now that we're talking about sustainable development, that we're talking about managing human disasters, human problems, we must understand the place of humans in some so-called natural disasters also. And until we're able to understand, then we talk about sustainability and environmental issues, like the issue of climate change, pollution, hurricane, and the rest of them. We're not talking, we are having many tornadoes, tsunamis, hurricanes, flash flooding all over the world. This urban ecology theory, we also want us to know that what are the roles of human beings in all of this? What are the roles of human beings in all of this? And are we planning appropriately? We're talking about sustainable cities, smart city, resilient cities, mega cities. Are we planning effectively? Are we managing human actions? Is it well managed? Are we managing appropriately? These are issues that are very important. And this, we talk about global relevance, resilience, and the rest of it. So human and nature interaction is very important for us to be able to understand some of the things human beings are going through. And we talk about spatial heterogeneity. Spatial heterogeneity in the sense that the species you have in cities are not just homogeneous. They are heterogeneous in their uses, in their development, and in their dynamics. So cities, we talk about dynamic and temporal processes that are constantly changing. The landscape of cities are constantly changing, but these changes must be properly understood and managed. So this theory has a lot of strength, yet weaknesses. Number one is that this theory is interdisciplinary. Different disciplines contribute. The natural sciences, those sciences I have mentioned to you, is very holistic. This theory is able to explain different areas, different issues about cities, then it has a lot of practical application. You can apply this theory to different, even what we are saying today, like you see, like the examples I've given you. Some of the things we are saying today, this theory can still explain very well, talking about human nature interaction. This, the implication of it, even today, we're talking about human nature interaction, resilience, and sustainability focus. The focus of this theory talks about resilience, sustainability, smartness, responsible environmental management, responsible human behavior, the importance of urban governance. And these are very important for us. The cities must be well governed, and the way human beings interact with the environment must be properly factored into the calculus for sustainable cities, smart city, resilient city. As part of the weaknesses of these theories, we talk about methodological challenges. Some of the arguments of these theories are not subjected to strong methodological, validation. So we talk about methodological. Which methodology do we adopt? And again, talk about the geographical bias and cultural bias and social bias. Too much emphasis on geography, too much emphasis on culture, because as people live in cities, culture also develops. And this culture also becomes a way of life that continues to impact the environment of city. Oversimplification of complex urban issues. The issues in urban center are more complex than the way this theory put them. And there's no standard definition for many of the concepts, and they have insufficient focus on the social dimension also. There should be you give equal attention to the natural environment and social environment. But social environment seems to be very strong, especially from social perspective. So the definition of urban ecosystem and some of this, I tried to define ecosystem for you, but the theory did not do sufficient conceptual clarification. Wow. Till I see you in my next video, kindly click subscribe and bye for now.